The average American home contains over 300,000 items, and yet most of us can't find our car keys in the morning. We trip over shoes in the hallway, and we spend 55 minutes a day just looking for things we've misplaced. We spend billions on storage units, on closet systems, on plastic bins we stack in garages already too full to park a car in. And still the clutter multiplies. Still the kitchen counters disappear under mail and school forms, and small appliances we used once in 2019. Still the guest room closet is a hazard zone we warn visitors not to open. Meanwhile, I visited my 78-year-old friend Akiko in Kyoto last spring, and her apartment was so clear, so calm, so impossibly uncluttered that I actually laughed out loud. I stood in her living room and did a slow turn, looking for the mess, looking for the pile, looking for the one drawer she'd shoved everything into before I arrived. There was nothing. The surfaces were bare except for a single vase, with a single branch of cherry blossom. The floor was empty. The air itself felt lighter, like the room could breathe. I asked her how long it took to tidy up before I arrived, and she looked confused, tilting her head the way she does when I ask a question that reveals my American brain. She hadn't tidied at all. This was just how she lived. And then she told me something that rewired my brain. She said, in Japan, we don't declutter once a year like a punishment. We declutter a little bit every single day, and when something big needs to happen, we have tricks that finish it in 2 days. Not 2 weeks, not 2 months, 2 days. And her apartment, her calm mind, her ability to host a guest without a frantic cleaning panic, that was the proof. So I spent the next 3 months interviewing Japanese seniors, watching them in their homes, sitting on their tatami floors with cups of green tea, and testing their methods in my own cluttered American apartment. What I found were 7 ruthless decluttering tricks that can transform any space in 48 hours. Some of these are so deceptively simple they'll shock you. Others are so genius you'll wonder why no one ever told you. Let's start at number 7 and work our way to the most powerful trick of all. Number 7. They treat every object like it has a soul and a home. This sounds mystical, I know. The first time I heard it, I rolled my eyes. I was sitting in a community center in Osaka, surrounded by women in their 70s and 80s who were explaining their cleaning philosophies to me, with the patience of saints explaining gravity to a toddler. But stay with me, because this one shift changed everything for me. In Japan, there's a concept, rooted in both Shinto animism and centuries of cultural practice, that every object you own has a spirit, a purpose, and a rightful place. It's not just a spatula. It's the spatula that helps you feed your family, the one that flips the eggs on Sunday mornings, the one your daughter used when she was learning to cook. It's not just a sweater. It's the sweater that kept you warm through 3 winters, the one you wore on that trip to the mountains, the one that still smells faintly of cedar. And when you start seeing your possessions this way, you treat them differently. You don't just toss them on the counter and walk away, leaving them stranded and disrespected. You return them to their home with a small moment of gratitude, a silent thank you for their service. My friend Hiroshi, who is 82 and lives in a small apartment in Osaka with his wife of 55 years, showed me his kitchen drawer. He pulled it open with a little flourish, like a magician revealing a trick. Every single utensil had a specific spot, outlined in a little bamboo tray with compartments. The vegetable peeler had its own groove. The chopsticks rested in a narrow channel. The small paring knife lay diagonally across a felt-lined slot. And when he finished using something, he put it back immediately. Not later, not when the cooking was done, not when the meal was over and the dishes were being washed. Immediately. The peeler was in his hand, the carrot was peeled, the peeler was rinsed, dried with a cloth, and back in its groove before the carrot hit the cutting board. I asked him if this felt tedious, this constant returning, this endless micro-task of putting things away. He laughed and said, "What's tedious is spending 20 minutes searching for the vegetable peeler while your carrots sit on the cutting board, and your soup is about to boil over. What's tedious is the low-grade anxiety of a cluttered drawer, the way your stomach tightens every time you have to open it. What's tedious is buying a third peeler because you can't find the first two, and then all three show up 6 months later in the back of a cabinet. The ritual of returning things," he said, "that's peace. That's the opposite of tedious." A 2022 study from the University of Tokyo's Graduate School of Medicine found that older adults who maintained orderly living spaces had measurably lower cortisol levels, the stress hormone, compared to those in cluttered environments. The researchers took saliva samples throughout the day and found that the tidy group had cortisol profiles that looked like a gentle hill, rising slightly in the morning and falling steadily toward evening. The cluttered group had cortisol profiles that looked like a mountain range, jagged peaks and valleys that never really settled. The researchers noted that the act of returning objects to designated spots created a neurological feedback loop of completion and calm. Each small return was a tiny win, a microdose of order that told the brain you are safe, you are in control, the world is manageable. This isn't about being tidy for the sake of being tidy. It's about giving your brain one less thing to track, one less open loop humming in the background, one less low-grade stressor that you don't even notice anymore because you've lived with it so long it feels normal. So here's the 48-hour trick. Before you declutter anything, spend the first 2 hours of your weekend assigning a home to every category of object you actually want to keep. And I mean a specific home, not a general zone. Keys go on a hook by the door, not on the dining table, not on the bathroom counter, not in the pocket of yesterday's jeans. The hook, the single hook. The hook you can see from the front door. Scissors go in the drawer to the left of the sink, not in the junk drawer. Not on the desk. Not mysteriously vanished into another dimension, where all single socks and good pens eventually go. The drawer. The specific drawer. You're not decluttering yet, you're just drawing a map. Walk through your home with a notepad and write down where everything lives. The remote controls live in a small tray on the left side of the coffee table. The dog's leash lives on a hook by the back door. Your sunglasses live in the top right compartment of your bag. Be obsessive about this. The map is what makes the rest of the 48 hours possible. And then for the rest of the weekend, every time you touch an object, you return it to its home. Every single time. No exceptions. No, I'll do it later. No, I'm in a hurry. This alone will surface the stuff that doesn't have a home, the orphan clutter. The objects that drift from surface to surface because they have nowhere to belong. And that's the first stuff that needs to go. If you can't assign it a home, if you can't picture exactly where it lives, it doesn't belong in your life. Number 6. They use the 3-second rule for sentimental items. This one is brutal, and it's the reason most of us fail at decluttering. We pick up a t-shirt from a college event 15 years ago, a shirt we haven't worn since the Clinton administration, a shirt with a collar so stretched it looks like a neck brace, and suddenly we're lost in a memory spiral. We're 19 again, we're at that party, we're laughing with friends we haven't spoken to in a decade, and the shirt goes back in the drawer and nothing changes. The drawer is still full. The closet is still bursting, and we've just spent 20 minutes emotionally time traveling for a piece of fabric we will never wear again. Japanese seniors have a different approach. They hold the object, they close their eyes for 3 seconds, and they ask one question. Does this object actively contribute to my life right now, or am I just afraid to let go of the past? 3 seconds. That's the window. If the answer isn't an immediate and visceral yes, a yes that rises up from the gut before the brain can start negotiating, the object goes. I watched my friend Yumiko, who is 74, do this with a box of old letters from her late husband. We sat on her living room floor in Kobe, the box between us, the late afternoon light coming through the paper screens. She held each envelope for 3 seconds, her eyes closed, her breathing slow. Some she kept, pressing them to her chest with a small smile, a private moment I felt honored to witness. Most she placed gently in a recycling bag, her hand lingering for just a moment before letting go. I asked her if it hurt. She said, "Of course it hurts. He was the love of my life. Every letter is a piece of him." But the clutter of the past was hurting me more. Every time I opened that box, I felt the weight of everything I'd lost. The grief would crash over me, and I'd be useless for the rest of the day. Now I keep the few letters that still speak to me, the ones where I can hear his voice in the words, and I let the rest go with gratitude. The memory isn't in the paper. The paper is just paper. The memory is in me. It's in my children. It's in the way I make his favorite miso soup on cold mornings. I don't need 200 letters to remember I was loved. There's neuroscience behind this. A 2023 study from Kyushu University examined decision-making in older adults and found that prolonged deliberation over sentimental objects activated the brain's pain centers, specifically the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that lights up when you stub your toe or hear bad news. The longer you deliberate, the more it hurts. Meanwhile, rapid, intuitive decisions, the kind made in under 5 seconds, activated the prefrontal cortex's reward pathways. The quick yes or no felt good. It felt clean. It released a small hit of dopamine, the same chemical that rewards you for completing a task. The 3-second window isn't cruelty, it's self-compassion. You're sparing yourself the agony of an hour-long negotiation with a coffee mug you haven't used since 2008. A mug with a faded logo from a company you quit in 2011. A mug that's been living at the back of the cabinet behind the good mugs, taking up space, collecting dust, contributing nothing but guilt every time you see it. So here's your 48-hour assignment. Grab a box, a sturdy cardboard box that you can seal shut. Walk to the most emotionally loaded area of your home, the closet with your mother's old coats, the drawer of your children's baby clothes, the shelf of books from a version of yourself that no longer exists, the version that was going to learn French, the version that was going to take up watercolors, the version that was going to read War and Peace. Set a timer on your phone for 15 minutes, not 3 hours, 15 minutes. Pick up each item, give it 3 seconds, make the call, and move on. Do not pause the timer, do not sit down. Do not call your sister to ask if she wants it. The speed is the medicine. At the end of 15 minutes, close the box, tape it shut, and put it by the door for donation or disposal. Do not open it again. Do not shake it to guess what's inside. Do not peel back the tape for one last look. You'll be shocked how light you feel, how your shoulders drop, how the air in that room suddenly feels easier to breathe. Number 5. They declutter by category, not by room, starting with the most emotionally neutral stuff first. This is the secret that makes 48-hour decluttering possible. In the West, we tend to attack one room at a time. We go into the bedroom, get overwhelmed by the closet, drift into the bathroom, reorganize the medicine cabinet. Notice the hallway closet is a disaster. Start pulling out coats and 3 hours later the bedroom is still a disaster. The hallway looks like a bomb went off, and we're sitting on the floor scrolling through our phone because we've exhausted our decision-making capacity and we hate everything. Japanese seniors do something radically different. They gather every single item from a single category from across the entire home, pile it all in one place, and deal with it in one focused burst. And they start with the easiest category, the one with 0 emotional weight. The one where you don't have to grieve or negotiate or call your mother. The first category is usually something like expired food in the pantry, or old magazines or cleaning supplies, or the terrifying collection of plastic takeout containers with no matching lids. Stuff you can throw away with a clear conscience and a sense of righteous fury. The momentum from finishing one category completely, from seeing the empty shelf, from feeling the bag of trash leave your hand, fuels the next one. My friend Tashio, who is 81 and lives alone in a small house in Nagano with a view of the Japanese Alps, taught me this over a bowl of soba noodles. He said if you start with your father's old tools, you'll cry for an hour and quit. You'll hold the hammer he used to build your childhood bookshelf, and you'll be done. Start with the expired soy sauce. Throw away 12 bottles. Feel the power of that. Feel the absurdity of having 12 bottles of expired soy sauce. Laugh at yourself a little, then do the socks with holes. Then the old receipts from 2014, then the pens that don't write. By the time you get to the hard stuff, you've already won 5 small victories, and your brain trusts you to win the 6th. You've built a self-image as someone who finishes things, someone who clears categories, someone who is in control of their space. That self-image carries you through the emotional minefield of the sentimental items. I tested this in my own apartment. I started with the category of old cables and chargers, that universal symbol of technological hoarding. I pulled every single cord from every drawer, every box, every tangled nest behind the TV, every mysterious black cable that I'd been saving just in case it belonged to something important. I dumped them on the living room floor, and the pile was horrifying. It was a black plastic snake pit. There were 37 cables in that pile. I found a charger for a phone I hadn't owned since 2012. I found an Ethernet cable long enough to reach the moon. I found a proprietary connector for a digital camera that had been dead for a decade. I kept 4. The 4 that I actively used, that I could identify by sight, that I knew exactly what they powered. The rest went into an electronics recycling bag, and I felt like I'd shed a physical weight from my shoulders, like I'd been carrying those 33 useless cables around my neck for years, and someone had finally cut the cord. That one win gave me the energy to tackle the bathroom products next, the half-empty bottles of lotion, the expired sunscreen, the hotel shampoos I'd been hoarding like a dragon hoards gold. Then the books, the ones I'd read once and would never read again, the ones I'd never read and had to admit I never would. Then finally the clothes, the hardest category, the one I'd been avoiding for months. By Sunday evening, I had cleared more clutter than I had in the previous 6 months. My apartment felt bigger. My mind felt quieter. I walked from room to room just to enjoy the empty surfaces. So here's your 48-hour plan. On Saturday morning, do not walk into a room. Walk into a category, expired food. Go through every cabinet, every shelf, the back of the fridge, the deep freezer. The pantry you've been avoiding since Thanksgiving. Pile it all on the kitchen counter. Check every date. Throw away everything that's expired or that you know you'll never eat. Don't negotiate. Don't say, well, maybe for a baking project. Don't say, my aunt gave me this canned jackfruit, and I feel guilty throwing it away. If you haven't eaten it in a year, it's not food, it's guilt. And guilt is not a food group. Then move to the next easiest category. Papers and old mail. Gather every stack from every surface in the house, the pile by the front door, the pile on the dining table, the pile on your desk that's been there so long it's practically a fossil. Sort into keep and shred. Shred anything with personal information. Recycle the rest. Then move to linens and towels, the stained ones, the scratchy ones, the ones you keep for guests but would be embarrassed to actually give a guest. Then toiletries, the products you tried once and hated, the samples you'll never use. The makeup from a shade you haven't worn since 2016. Then finally, on Sunday afternoon, when you've built a fortress of small victories, When your brain is humming with the rhythm of decisive action, you tackle the sentimental stuff with your 3-second rule. The category method works because it gives you a complete picture of what you own. When you see all 47 coffee mugs in one pile on your kitchen floor, keeping 35 of them suddenly feels absurd. You can see the redundancy. You can see the waste. When you see all 12 pairs of scissors, you realize you don't need 12 pairs of scissors. You need 3, one for the kitchen, one for the desk, one for the utility drawer. The excess becomes visible, and visible excess is much harder to justify than excess scattered across 6 rooms and a basement. Number 4. They practice the art of the temporary box, which they call the farewell container. This is one of the most genius tricks I've ever encountered, and it solves the single biggest problem in decluttering. The fear of making a mistake. The fear that you'll throw something away and need it desperately the next day. The fear that you'll regret letting go, that you'll wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, remembering the exact item you donated, and the exact scenario where it would have been perfect. The fear that you're not just decluttering, you're erasing a piece of yourself. Japanese seniors have a system that completely neutralizes this fear. It's so elegant, so psychologically sophisticated, that when my friend Keiko explained it to me, I had to sit in silence for a full minute just to absorb the brilliance. They take a cardboard box, a simple brown box you can get at any post office, and they label it with today's date and a date exactly 3 months in the future. They fill it with all the items they're 90% sure they want to get rid of but can't quite commit to. The items that fall into the maybe zone. The items that make their hand hesitate over the donation bag. Then they seal the box, put it in a closet or a garage or under a bed, and set a calendar reminder for 3 months later. Here's the magic. In 3 months, when the reminder goes off, they almost never open the box. They can't even remember what's inside. The emotional attachment has dissolved, evaporated like morning mist. The box goes directly to donation, unopened, its contents a mystery they no longer care to solve. My friend Keiko, who is 76 and lives in a beautiful minimalist home in Kamakura with a garden that looks like a meditation retreat, told me she's been using this method for 40 years. She said the box is a gentle goodbye. It lets my heart catch up to my brain. My brain knows I don't need the ceramic figurine from a trip I barely remember. A trip to a town whose name I've forgotten. A figurine that's been collecting dust on a shelf since 1998. But my heart needs a transition period. The heart is slow. The heart holds on. The box gives my heart the time it needs to loosen its grip. And in 40 years, I've only ever retrieved 2 items from the boxes. 2 items in 4 decades. A single pair of earrings her mother had given her, and a small kitchen tool she genuinely needed. Everything else, hundreds of items, thousands of them, gone without a second thought. The farewell container works because it short-circuits the scarcity mindset. Your brain thinks, I'm not losing this forever, I'm just putting it in a time capsule. I can change my mind. I have an escape hatch. The panic doesn't fire, the amygdala stays quiet, but the truth is, out of sight really is out of mind. Once the object is no longer in your daily visual field, your brain stops tracking it, stops assigning it value, stops weaving it into your identity. By the time the 3 months are up, you've already lived without it perfectly fine. You haven't missed it, you haven't thought about it, it's become a stranger. There's a psychological principle here called the endowment effect, documented by behavioral economists including Daniel Kahneman and Richard Thaler. We overvalue things simply because we own them. Ownership itself creates a kind of irrational attachment, a sense that this object is special, this object is worth more, this object is somehow an extension of our very self. The farewell container tricks your brain into releasing ownership without triggering the panic of immediate loss. It's a slow fade instead of a sudden break. So here's your 48-hour trick. As you go through your categories, keep a box nearby. A real box, not a mental box, not a pile on the floor that you'll deal with later. Anything that makes you hesitate, anything that makes you say, "But what if?" goes into the box. Not back on the shelf. Not into a maybe pile that you'll sort later because later never comes. The box. Seal it at the end of the weekend. Write the date 3 months from now on the top in big letters with a marker. Put it somewhere you won't see it every day. A high closet shelf, the back of the garage, the storage space under the stairs. And trust that your future self, the one who hasn't thought about this box in 90 days, the one who has been living in a clean and peaceful home, will make a much clearer decision than your present self, who's currently drowning in sentiment and fear and the exhaustion of decision fatigue. Number 3. They use the power of the 5-minute reset, which they practice every single evening without fail. This is the habit that keeps a decluttered home from ever becoming cluttered again. And it's so simple it almost feels like cheating. Every evening, after dinner, before any relaxing happens, before the television goes on, before the phone comes out, before anyone collapses onto the couch, every member of the household spends exactly 5 minutes returning the home to its baseline state. Not deep cleaning, not scrubbing grout or mopping floors or reorganizing the pantry. Just a rapid, focused sweep where every object is returned to its home. Dishes go into the dishwasher or are hand-washed and dried and put away. Cushions are fluffed and placed back on the sofa, the corners aligned, the fabric smooth. Remote controls are set neatly on the coffee table, parallel to each other, charging side down. Mail is sorted into the recycling bin or the action folder, never left in a pile. Shoes are lined up in the jenkin, the entryway, toes pointing toward the door. Bags are hung on hooks. The kitchen counters are wiped down with a damp cloth. The crumbs swept into the sink, the coffee maker cleaned and ready for tomorrow. 5 minutes. That's it, 300 seconds. My friend Akira, who is 79 and lives with his wife in a small apartment in Tokyo, told me they've done this every night for 52 years of marriage. He said, in the beginning, we did it because we had a tiny space and clutter would swallow us by Wednesday. The apartment was so small that if we left one day's mess, it felt like a hoarder's den by Friday. Now we do it because it's the ritual that tells our brains the working day is over. The home is at peace, so we can be at peace. The dishes are done, the surfaces are clear, the shoes are straight, and our minds can finally rest. And he's right. There's something neurologically profound about closing the day with order. A 2021 study from the University of Tokyo's Department of Psychology found that participants who performed a 5-minute evening tidying ritual reported significantly higher sleep quality and lower next morning anxiety compared to those who left their living spaces in disarray. The tidy group fell asleep faster, woke up fewer times during the night, and reported feeling more refreshed in the morning. The researchers theorized that visual clutter creates low-level cognitive load that the brain continues to process even during sleep. Your unconscious mind is still tracking the dirty dishes, still cataloging the scattered shoes, still fretting over the pile of mail. When you clear the clutter, you clear the mental load. You give your sleeping brain permission to actually rest. And here's the part that stunned me. The 5-minute reset means you never have to do a massive weekend cleaning marathon again. The baseline never deteriorates. The home is always 90% guest ready. You're never embarrassed by an unexpected knock on the door. Never scrambling to hide things in closets when the doorbell rings. Never apologizing for the mess while your guest stands awkwardly in the hallway. I started doing this in my own apartment, and the first week was hard. I wanted to collapse on the couch after dinner. I wanted to leave the pans soaking overnight. I wanted to tell myself I'd do it in the morning. a promise I had broken approximately 400 times in my adult life. But I set a timer for 5 minutes and I moved fast, and I treated it like a game, a race against the clock. By the end of the week, it had become automatic. The timer would go off, and I'd realize I was already done, my hands moving on autopilot, my mind already relaxing. The apartment stayed clean. My morning coffee tasted better when I wasn't staring at last night's dishes, when I could walk into a kitchen that was ready for me, a kitchen that said welcome to a new day instead of you should have cleaned me last night. I stopped dreading coming home to chaos. I started looking forward to walking through the door. So here's your assignment. Tonight, after your evening meal, set a timer for 5 minutes. Do not sit down first. Do not check your phone. Do not say, "I'll just rest my eyes for a minute," because that minute becomes an hour and the dishes are still there. Move through your home and return everything to its place. Do it with your partner, your kids, your roommate. Make it a team sprint. Put on music. See who can return the most items to their homes before the timer goes off. When the timer goes off, stop. You're done. Sit down, exhale, and notice how the room feels. Notice how you feel. Tomorrow morning, notice the difference when you walk into a kitchen that's ready for you instead of one that's still holding yesterday's mess. That feeling is the reward, and once you've tasted it, you'll never want to go back. Number 2. They treat the entryway as a sacred boundary between the chaos of the world and the peace of the home. In Japan, the genkin, the traditional entryway, is not just a place to drop your shoes. It's a psychological threshold, a liminal space where you transition from the public self to the private self, from the noise of the street to the quiet of the home. Shoes come off. The dirt of the street stays at the door, literally and metaphorically. And critically, nothing enters the home that doesn't have a purpose and a place. The genkin is a filter, not a storage zone. My friend Sachiko, who is 80 and lives in a beautiful old house in Kyoto with dark wooden beams and sliding paper doors, has a genkin that is almost empty. A small wooden shoe rack with 3 pairs of shoes, her everyday walking shoes, her indoor slippers, and a pair of sandals for quick trips to the garden. A single hook for her bag, a simple canvas tote she's carried for years. A small ceramic bowl for her keys, glazed in a deep blue that matches the sky at dusk. That's it, no piles of mail, no stack of Amazon boxes waiting to be broken down. No collection of shoes that haven't been worn since 2017, gathering dust and resentment. No umbrella graveyard. No bag of donations that's been sitting by the door for 3 months. I asked her how she keeps it so clear, this tiny space that in my own home had become a black hole of clutter. She said, the genkin is the mouth of the home. You wouldn't let garbage pile up in your mouth. You wouldn't let old food sit between your teeth. Why would you let it pile up in your entryway? And this framing shifted something in me, a physical sensation like a door clicking shut in my mind. The entryway is not a storage zone. It's not a transitional dumping ground. It's not a place where things wait to be dealt with. It's a filter, a membrane, a gatekeeper. Everything that comes through that door must earn its place. This means the mail gets sorted the moment it comes in. Not after dinner, not on the weekend, not when the pile gets so tall it falls over. The moment it comes in. Junk mail goes directly into the recycling bin that lives right by the door. A bin that is emptied every recycling day without fail. Important letters go immediately into the action folder, a simple folder on a small shelf where bills and invitations and anything requiring a response are kept. Packages are opened, the items are put away in their designated homes, and the cardboard is broken down and taken to the recycling bin before you even sit down. There's no pile of stuff that you'll deal with later. Later is the enemy of order. Later is a lie we tell ourselves. Later is how a single day's mail becomes a 6-month mountain, How one Amazon box becomes a cardboard fort. How one pair of shoes left by the door becomes a shoe store explosion. A 2020 study from the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology in Japan found that cluttered entryways were one of the strongest predictors of overall household disorganization. The researchers visited hundreds of homes and found a near-perfect correlation. When the entryway was cluttered, the rest of the home was almost always cluttered as well. The entryway sets the tone. It's the first thing you see when you come home, the first sensory input your brain receives. If you walk through chaos to enter your home, you carry that chaos with you into every room. Your shoulders stay tense. Your mind stays scattered. You never fully transition from the stress of the outside world to the peace of the inside world. If you walk through order, you carry that order. Your nervous system gets the signal. You are home now, you are safe, you can relax. So here's your 48-hour trick. Spend 1 hour this weekend completely emptying your entryway. Take everything out. The shoes, the coats, the bags, the mail, the random objects that have accumulated for no reason, the single glove, the expired coupon, the rock your child brought home from school 3 years ago. Clean the floor. Wipe down the walls. Sweep the corners where dust and dead leaves have gathered. Then only put back the absolute essentials. A small shoe rack with only the shoes you wear at least once a week. Seasonal shoes, the snow boots, the beach sandals, go in a closet elsewhere. 1 hook per person for everyday bags. A small tray for keys and wallets. A recycling bin right by the door. That's it. If an object doesn't serve your daily entry and exit, if it doesn't make your transition smoother or your departure easier, it doesn't belong in the Jenkin. And then starting immediately, you treat this space as sacred. Every time you come home, you sort the mail before you take another step. Every time you take off your shoes, you place them neatly on the rack, toes pointing out, ready for the next journey. Every time you leave, you do a 1-second scan to make sure nothing is out of place. This one zone, maintained ruthlessly, will change the entire energy of your home. It will change the way you feel when you walk through the door. It will change the way you start your day and the way you end it. The Jenkin is small, but its impact is enormous. And number 1, the most powerful decluttering trick Japanese seniors use in 48 hours. They invite a guest. This sounds absurdly simple, I know. It sounds like something your mother would suggest with a knowing smile. But it is the most effective motivational tool I have ever encountered, and it's rooted in a deep cultural value that transforms the home from a private storage unit into a space of warmth and welcome. In Japan, the home is not a private fortress the way it often is in the West, where we hide our mess behind closed doors and apologize for the state of things when someone rings the bell unexpectedly. The home is a space of hospitality, and hospitality demands order. You cannot welcome someone into chaos. You cannot offer tea and conversation when you're stepping over piles of laundry and the sink is full of dishes. The presence of a guest demands a certain baseline of dignity, and that demand is the most powerful decluttering engine on earth. My friend Yuki, who is 77 and lives alone in a small apartment in Sapporo, told me she invites her neighbor over for tea every single Wednesday. Not because she particularly loves tea with this neighbor, though she does, but because it forces her to keep her home in a state of readiness. She said, if I know someone is coming Wednesday, I will do the 5-minute reset every night. I will keep the Jenkin clear. I will not let the dishes pile up. I will not let the laundry sit in the basket for 4 days. The guest is my accountability partner, even if she doesn't know it. She thinks she's just coming for green tea and gossip, but really she's the reason my apartment is always clean. And when I need to do a big declutter, when the closet has gotten out of hand or the paperwork has piled up, I invite someone for Saturday. That gives me 48 hours. And let me tell you, Nothing focuses the mind like the knowledge that another human being is about to walk through your door. Nothing lights a fire under you like the thought of someone you respect seeing your mess. I tested this in the most dramatic way possible. I had been putting off decluttering my home office for months. The closet was a black hole of old electronics, binders from projects I barely remembered, and cables for devices that no longer existed. There were receipts from 2016. There was a printer that hadn't worked since the Obama administration. I'd open the door, feel a wave of nausea, and close it again. I'd tell myself I'd deal with it next weekend, and next weekend would come and go, and the closet would still be there, pulsing with silent judgment. Finally, in a moment of desperation, I called a friend and invited him over for dinner on Sunday night. That was Friday morning. I had 48 hours, and I attacked that office with a ferocity I didn't know I possessed. The temporary box filled up in the first hour. The 3-second rule got applied to every sentimental item, every old notebook, every gift I'd kept out of obligation. The cables got gathered into a single pile and reduced to a handful of essentials. The old printer went to the electronics recycling center. The binders got emptied, the paper shredded, the empty binders donated. By Sunday afternoon, the office was transformed. The closet was organized, with shelves you could actually see and boxes that were labeled and intentional. The surfaces were clear. The floor was vacuumed. And when my friend arrived, I didn't have to apologize for the mess or steer him away from certain rooms. I just opened the door and let him in. The relief was so profound I nearly cried. I had been carrying the weight of that closet for months, years maybe, and in 48 hours it was gone. There's a psychological phenomenon here called social accountability. A 2019 study from the University of Tsukuba's Institute of Psychology found that individuals who scheduled regular social visits to their homes maintained significantly more organized living spaces than those who did not, even when controlling for baseline tidiness. The mere anticipation of a guest's gaze was enough to trigger sustained decluttering behavior. The researchers called it the visitor effect. Knowing that someone will see your space, that someone will form an impression, that someone will sit on your couch and look around your living room, that knowledge activates a part of the brain that self-motivation simply cannot reach. So here's your final, most powerful 48-hour trick. Right now, before you do anything else, before you open a single drawer or sort a single piece of mail, text a friend and invite them over for coffee or a meal in exactly 2 days. Give yourself the deadline. Make it real, put it on your calendar, tell them you're excited to see them. And then let the pressure of hospitality fuel you through the 7 tricks. Start with assigning homes to your essentials. Move through your categories from easiest to hardest. Use the 3-second rule on sentimental items. Fill the farewell container and seal it shut. Maintain the Jenkin as a sacred space. And every evening, do your 5-minute reset. By the time your guest arrives, your home will look and feel completely different. And more importantly, you'll have built the systems that keep it that way. This isn't about having a perfect, magazine-ready home. It's about having a home that supports your peace instead of stealing it. It's about walking through your door and feeling your shoulders drop instead of tense up. It's about knowing where your things are, feeling proud of your space, and being ready to welcome people into your life without shame or panic. Try it. You have 48 hours. Start now.